this computer. Excellent. Okay, we'll start again. So we are studying Rambam. It's Tuesday, August 11th, the 21st day of the month of Av. We're learning Rambam, Laws of Talmud Torah, Chapter 4. Okay. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Give me a second. There we go. Okay, everybody's here with me. Let's begin. So today we're going to focus on the qualities of the students and the methods of teaching. Rambam begins. And what we'll do is we'll take questions after each halacha. If anybody has any questions, we'll pause a moment. Teach. You have to teach a student who is a proper student. If a student's going off the path, you bring him back to do good. The proper path, and you examine him. Then you can bring him into the study hall, and we teach him. The sages said, somebody who teaches an improper student, kiluzark evan lemarkulis. It's as if he throws a stone to Markulis. He translates here to Mercury. We actually have it in today's Chumash. We have Rashi references this. Markulis seems to be was an idol that was served by tossing stones at it. So anybody who teaches an improper student is as if he's serving idols. Shneimar, as it says in Proverbs, somebody throws stones, he gives honor to a fool. In covered elateda, honor is Torah. The wise shall inherit honor. So bottom line is, you only teach Torah the kids that are acting properly. If we were to do that, we could reduce our sizes of our yeshiva to a minimal amount, right? Because, for those who are old enough to remember, we have the marks to bear to show that the Board of Education was used on our backsides. So what does this refer to? So what this refers to is, there's a story in the Talmud that they changed leadership in the yeshiva and they replaced Rabbi Gamliel with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. That's where Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, I'm like a man of 70 years old. The story that is mentioned in the Haggadah. And it says when they did that, they had to increase, they had to bring in, they had to expand the study hall. Why? Because Rabbi Gamliel before him had said that any student who's not Teichei Kibadai, who is not sincere in his studies, shouldn't be allowed in. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah opened up the doors. And meaning, that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, even if the student is not perfect, I see the quality of the student that is there. And I see that by studying, we can bring out the goodness that is there. So, and that was the way that was later accepted to be that to be the case. So what it means over here is there's sometimes when you study with someone where the person is literally studying in order to use the information against Torah. Such people you're not allowed to teach. Where you have people that are literally, so you have those types of people that they use the studies against the purpose of Torah. Them you're not allowed to teach. But other than that, it's just simply the child is misbehaving. For that purpose itself, doesn't say throw a child out of school. So one time a story with a child, young man, they're going to throw him out of the yeshiva. And he goes to the principal and he says, just remember, whatever you're doing now is going to affect me and my kids and my grandkids. You're throwing them all out of yeshiva. And the principal relented. So that's about the quality of the student. So so to a teacher who doesn't follow the proper path, even though he's a wise man. And everybody needs him for his wisdom. We don't learn from him. He has to follow the correct path. As it says, that the lips of a Kohen will keep knowledge. And ask, look for Torah from his mouth. He's like an angel. Our sages said, if the teacher is like an angel, search to try to study from him. But if not, do not try to study from him. So this is an important point, that the teacher also has to be a person of quality. There's a story with the previous Rebbe, where the previous Rebbe wanted to hire a teacher for his daughters. And there was a person who was very learned, but he was lacking in his midas taiva. He was lacking in his actions. He wasn't doing everything that was supposed to be done. So the previous Rebbe did not want to hire him. So he tells the previous Rebbe, what's the problem? I'll tell them, I'll teach them. I won't tell them what to do. I'll teach them, and they'll learn. That's what you want from me. It's not about what I do. It's about what I teach. I'll teach them. So the previous Rebbe responded, what are they going to learn? They're going to learn the same thing. They're going to learn to sit and study and not to act, because they're going to look at you as a model, that you know a lot, but you're not acting properly. And that will be their model as well. So the fact that a teacher has great knowledge is not sufficient to make him a teacher. He has to be acting properly as well, which is also something to be aware of when we're looking at the teachers that are teaching our children. How do we teach? Teacher sits at the head. Everybody is like in a semicircle around him, so they all can see him and hear him. The teacher shouldn't sit on the chair and the students around him on the floor, but everybody either should be on the floor together or everybody should be on the chairs. Originally, what happened was the teacher would sit, and out of respect, the students would be standing. Already from before the destruction of the Second Temple, so already 2,000 years ago, it became the thing that everybody should teach while they're sitting. So out of sign of respect, it was that the teacher is sitting and everybody else is standing. But then it came from a practical point, it was realized that to help in their studies, it's best that everybody be seated. And that's the way it was, everybody on the same level. Okay, we're good? Continue. Number 3. So what we have over here is a concept of a spokesman. That used to be set up that the teacher would teach through a spokesman. The purpose of the spokesman was a number of things. Some of the things was perhaps the teacher didn't have a loud voice. So the spokesman would amplify and speak louder that everybody could hear. That was one point. Number 2, perhaps the teacher did not speak the common language that the students knew. So he became the translator for the teacher to the common language. Number 3, it could be that the teacher would teach in brevity, and the spokesman would speak at length that which the teacher spoke. So this is what we're going to be speaking about here. Should he teach them, instruct them personally, he would do so. If he was teaching through a spokesman, the spokesman stands between him and the students. The teacher tells the spokesman, and the spokesman speaks to the students. And they would ask, they would speak, the students would speak to the middleman, who would speak to the teacher. Then it would reverse. The teacher speaks to the middleman, and middleman back to the people asking. Like, the teacher should not raise his voice louder than the spokesman. Like, nor should the spokesman speak louder than that of the teacher. When he teaches, he should not add or detract or change what he said, unless the spokesman was actually the teacher's father or the teacher's teacher. So then he has the authority to explain what the teacher said. If the teacher says something to the spokesman, and he says it in the name of the teacher's teacher or in the teacher's father, and out of respect, he wouldn't call them by name. He would say, my father said, my teacher said. When the spokesman speaks to the people, when the spokesman speaks to the people, what he would say is, the teacher of our teacher, Rabbi this and this, he would call him by his name, or his father, Rabbi this and this, said so, even though his teacher did not reference them by name. The teacher himself cannot call them by their first name out of respect, but the spokesman can. This is where when we were students, the teacher taught and the students did not understand. You should not get angry. You should repeat it many times until they appreciate the depth of what they're studying. The student should not say, yeah, I understand it. And the fact is, he didn't understand it. The student should go again and again, ask again and again. If his teacher got angry at him, the student should say, why? It's Torah. I need to study. My comprehension, I don't understand that quickly. Now, we're going to soon see later that if the student wasn't putting himself to his studies, that's different. But if he's putting himself to his studies, he simply didn't understand, the teacher has to have patience with him. We're good with this. I'll tell you a story. The story goes back a few years. I was in third grade. What year was I in third grade? I believe I was in third grade. This is 1972, a few years ago. And I had a teacher, a Rebbe, an old school Rebbe. And my family would study with him outside of school hours. He was also a sofer. I hope you don't mind me going off sharing this story. He was also a sofer. And I'm living in Los Angeles, and he would go, and people would bring him Torahs to fix. If you know, there's a city called Elsinore. Elsinore is northeast of San Diego. So they had there a small synagogue. So one Sunday, he puts me in the car with him, because he has to go to fix the Torahs there, and he wants someone to go with him. He doesn't want to go by himself. So I'm in the back seat, and we are actually studying the Chumash and Rashi that we were studying in class, and we're going ahead. And it's Parshas Vayetze, and there's a section there in the second half of the portion of Jacob with the sheep, and there's a lot of new words that I never learned before. And I'm supposed to be reading and learning and making sure I know it. The truth is, I'm getting sick in the back seat because I'm reading. I was, reading while driving, while the car's in motion, and I'm getting sick. But I was embarrassed to say I'm getting sick, so I'm reading and saying, yeah, I understand. I ask a couple questions. Bottom line is, comes Monday, this is Sunday, comes Monday. And the rabbi calls upon me, oh, he has a student who knows all these hard words. Trust me, I didn't know them. And I paid a price for it. I have the marks to show that I paid the price. And every time I study that piece of Chumash every year, I remember that story. So anyway, so that's when I was too embarrassed to say I don't understand. And no, I learned the lesson. So that's the story for today. So don't be embarrassed to say I don't understand. A student should not be embarrassed that his fellow students, they picked it up, they know it all, and he doesn't know it. If he's going to be embarrassed, he's going to be embarrassed, he's going to come to the study hall, he's not going to learn, but he's going to be embarrassed to say something. Our sages said, we find this in Pirkei Avot, a bashful person will not learn because he won't ask, and a short-tempered person cannot teach because the students are going to be afraid to ask him. When is it said? This is where the students don't know something because of the depth of the matter, or they simply don't have the capacity to know. So they're asking again. The teacher realizes that's not the case. They're simply not putting themselves to it. That's why they didn't understand. You have to show anger, display anger. And Maimonides has this thing. You're allowed to not become angry, but display anger, display a temperament of anger so that it puts the people, oh my gosh, what's going on? We better be careful here. In order to sharpen them, to get them focused and studying. But not real anger. To show anger, but not to be really angry. Really angry, not supposed to be. This is what our sages said. Throw, he translates fear. Fear means gall, G-A-L-L. Right? Bitterness. Get them on their toes. The teacher has to keep his respect and not act frivolously before the students, and not to amuse themselves, not to eat and drink with them. No, they should have fear from him. It means that there has to be a certain respect and a certain space between the teacher and the students. He's not the teacher, he's not the student's friend. He's their teacher. He can be kind, he can be nice, he can be good with them, but he's their teacher. He's not their buddy. It does say that the famous thing that Rabba would come into the study hall, before he started studying, he would say something of a lighthearted nature, like a joke. Like, Rabbi starts his speeches with a joke to get everybody listening. So too, the Rabbi, when he comes to the students, he would say something of a lighthearted nature to get everybody interested, and then start studying. So that you're allowed to do. But again, not be buddy-buddy with the two students. Now we come into the student asking questions. Everybody teaches, and everybody wants to ask questions. Rabbi, what if this? And Rabbi, what if that? And people bringing questions from all over the place. So that's what we're going to be discussing now. Number 6. First of all, when the teacher comes into the house of study, you don't ask him a question. Rabbi, I have a question for you. Let the rabbi settle in, the teacher settle in, pull himself together, and then ask. Because until then, he's not focused. In a Talmud likewise, a student, you don't come running into class, Rabbi, I have a question. Sit down, collect yourself, and then you can ask the question. Be focused. You don't ask two things at the same time. Ask questions on the topic that's being discussed, not on other topics. Why? Because the teacher may not be embarrassed. He doesn't know. Maybe he doesn't know the answer. That's not what you're learning right now. Ask, right? This is a famous thing. Ask to the point. Don't bring in other matters. The teacher is allowed to, from time to time, ask a question that's a little bit off topic to make sure that the students are on the ball and listening to, and they realize what's going on. To see if they remember what they learned. Perhaps they don't remember. So he's allowed to ask them questions to get them focused. Likewise, you can ask about other matters, even if they're not involved in it, in order to get them going. In number 7, we don't ask questions while standing. If you ask a question, sit down, focus. Don't answer while standing. You don't ask standing on a higher point than the teacher. It's not respectful. You're not from afar. Hey, teacher, I got a question for you. No. It's not the way you ask. You don't shout. Not from behind him. You face him. Focus and respectful. Now here he says something. You only ask about the subject that they're reading. Now this seems to be similar to what we just read before. According to some, what it should actually say ki'inyan. You only ask in the manner of what you're reading. So it's not about the topic, but rather in the mode of asking. You ask in the same manner that you're teaching, not in a totally different manner. And that allows for a focused question. Right? So you don't ask, people sometimes, Bob's questions is, the introduction to the question is 5 times longer than the question itself. So ask in the same manner that you're learning. Don't ask except with an attitude of awe. And even on the same topic, only ask 3 issues. Don't ask more than 3 things. We said only ask 1 at a time, only ask us 3. Now we go into the next piece, into if you have questions of different natures, which question is addressed first? And the general rule will be that you answer questions that are more pertinent to action. 2 people asked a question. One asked on the point that's being discussed, the other one off the point. So you answer first, the person who's asking on the point being discussed. Something concerning a practical thing and something that's not practical, you first answer the practical element, then the theological or the conceptual idea. Halacha or medrash, halacha or a medrash, you first go to halacha, Jewish law. That's practical. Medrash v'agada, if it's medrash or agada, like a story, niskakim l'medrash. First go to medrash because ultimately medrash can sometimes affect halacha, even though it's not directly. But a medrash, a drash on a verse, can direct you towards a halacha. Agada of a kal v'chaimer. If you have a agada and a kal v'chaimer, what's a kal v'chaimer? Kal v'chaimer is what you say. It's one of the ways that the Torah is analyzed. Kal v'chaimer means, like it says, that if a poor person can afford it, then a rich person can definitely afford it, right? That's a major minor inference. So those types of things, even though it's an analytical perspective, but a kal v'chaimer and agada, kal v'chaimer ultimately is closer to a practical result. even though you're just doing this in an analytical perspective for your study, it relates more to action. Even though it's not a direct, it may not be a conclusion, but it's a step closer to it. Likewise, the Kavachemer Gzereshava is where you have, he translates here, interpretation of the verses, where you have similar terminology. And because of the similar terminology between the verses, we learn things from one verse to the other. So Niskakim Kavachemer, you first go to the Kavachemer, because the Kavachemer is the major minor inference, is a more of a logical inference. As a more of a logical inference, it's closer to action. If two people are asking on the same type of ideas, one is wise, one is a scholar, one is a student, you first go to the Chacham. Talmud Amaretz is Talmud, a student and someone who is common. Amaretz, let me try and say it's an ignorant, doesn't have to be ignorant, somebody who's a commoner. He's first a student because he's involved in learning. If both are of equal stature, whether they're scholars, students, or commoners, and they asked on the same ideas, they asked on 2 halachas, 2 answers, 2 questions, 2 deeds. So they ask both about similar concepts. So there's no precedence. It has to give one or the other. So if the teacher answered both questions together, so then the spokesman has the option as to choose who to answer first. One more halacha. You don't sleep in a study hall. Somebody who nods off, his Torah will be torn in shreds. Solomon says in Proverbs, drowsiness will call the person in rags, that because the person's clothing is a reference to his Torah study, and by sleeping in the study hall, that destroys his Torah. Now, however, you have those stories of people who did sleep in the study hall. So a person who's literally studying Torah day and night, he's never going home, that person is allowed to sleep in a study hall. Because he's he's studying day and night. They only speak words of Torah. Somebody sneezes, you don't say Gesundheit in the study hall. Other stuff. Your focus is both because in the purpose of advancing the study and also out of respect for the study hall. The sanctity of a study hall exceeds the sanctity of a synagogue. It's a general rule. Therefore, there were some rabbis that they would make sure to do their prayers in a study hall. Because the sanctity of a place of Torah study is considered to be higher than the sanctity of a synagogue. Why? Because prayer is something I'm doing for right now. I'm praying. I have an issue. I'm praying. So prayer is of a temporary nature. While studying Torah is Eitz Chaim, is a tree of life, is the concept of eternal life. So therefore, studying is the idea of Chaye Eilam, permanent life. Prayer is considered temporary for the moment, and the studying is greater than prayer. So therefore, a place of study is considered to be more sanctified than a place of prayer. All right? Any questions before we finish?
Yes, I have a question, Rabbi.
Go ahead.
So
identify yourself. I see a phone number.
Okay, it's Earl.
Okay.
And I want to ask you a question about, are these conditions required and established before a student enters a yeshiva?
So that's what I said. Today, again, to enter yeshiva as what? The quality of a student. We're going to accept a student today. Though we said before about accepting a student, we want to make sure the student is not going to use Torah against the purposes of Torah. That's what our
No.
concern over here is about.
Yes, no, what I'm referring to is back in Maimonides' day, and all of these conditions, preconditions, that you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't ask this question, were they established before the student entered the yeshiva at the time of Maimonides?
Well, it's not, again, I don't understand the question exactly, because about questioning, et cetera, is it's a condition of the study. So the teacher has the option of ignoring. I mean, do we turn around and tell the student, don't ask questions that don't pertain? Maybe. I don't know if that's specifically a condition of entrance of the yeshiva.
Yeah. I mean, there's more than just one condition, and I'm just wondering how, if the student then did not follow all of these conditions, was he then thrown out of the synagogue or the yeshiva?
No. This is instructions for the student of how to act. The conditions for coming in, Maimonides said, was his personal conduct, not the mode of his asking.
Okay, I'm not quite able to give you what I'm trying to say, but that's okay.
Means if a
All
student
right.
keeps on pestering with questions, do we throw him out? The answer is no. If that's where we're going to.
Okay.
All right?
Yes, okay.
All right.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
when you mentioned in the beginning to use knowledge against the Torah, the meaning is to influence another people in a wrong way, because it's a little bit contradiction. I mean, if you learn Torah, you can be better. I mean, whatever you get from how
If you learn Torah, what?
When you say knowledge against the Torah, I mean, what the interpretation is to influence another people in a wrong way?
That's part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's part of it. I mean, a person can try to use Torah to write things against Torah. We find apostates throughout the generations. They would study Talmud and then they would go ahead and bring accusations against the Talmud, and we suffered from that.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Anything else? Okay. Have a great day, and person, I'll see you next Tuesday, God willing.
All right.
Yeshua, Rabbi,
Take
thank
care.
you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.